Hi, everybody, and welcome back to We Need to Talk About This. I'm your host, Chuck Oliveris. Tonight is a special edition of We Need to Talk About This because I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole and I watched a documentary recently about phrogging, which we used to call squatting. But tonight I'm going to share some real life stories. Imagine, if you will, you're in your home with your family for 2 or 3 months. Life is normal. You come home, you eat dinner, you go to work. But this whole time, someone else has been living in that house with you and you did not know about it. That's creepy and it's weird. And I'm going to show you some creepy footage from some video that people put up cameras in their house because they weren't sure what was going on. But I'm also going to share some stories with you. And I guarantee you by the end of the podcast, you're going to be really looking at your home a little bit differently. That's tonight's special edition. So let's talk about this. Phrogging. Episode 51 of We Need to Talk About This. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Chuck Oliveris. Welcome to the special edition. So we're going to kind of talk about something interesting because it's been around for a while. It's been happening for a while. Typically, though, when we talk about people squatting, it means that people have gone into an empty dwelling somewhere, maybe an empty home you have, and they live there and they hang out for a couple months and use it as their own home and stuff like that. This is a little bit different. So what's happening now, and there's quite a few stories of it, and I've got some photos to show you things that people have found, but some creepy things have happened to them while living in their home with their families when they didn't realize someone else was also cohabitating that space with them, which is kind of freaky, right? So the term is phrogging. The phrogging term here, this is the definition. It's the act of sneaking into a person's home and hiding among its occupants without their knowledge. Okay, so there's a special, there's been a lot of movies like this, right? Man Under the Stairs. I don't know if that's the correct title, but there's been a lot of films you've seen where somebody was in the walls watching the family and living in the house. I saw a couple of films like that. But there's a documentary, and I think it was Lifetime that did it, and it might have been the one I watched, and you can look for it. It's streaming right now. It was done in, I think, 2021, so this is how long this has been happening, and I'm sure it's happened before that. There's many cases of this phrogging. But in any case, if you want to look for it, it's phrogging, Phrogging, hider in my house. And that's the one you want to watch, and it will really freak you out a little bit. So we need to talk about this. So you're living in your home, you're living your daily life every day with your family, your dog, your cat, and all this stuff. Unbeknownst to you, someone else is living in your home with you. Typically, what goes along with this will be things that are askew and moved around a little bit and stuff like that. So it's interesting because there's different types of phrogging that have gone on. For instance, in this particular case, this is a group of roommates here, A&E investigation. So this is interesting. Let's read this real quick to you. So it says it's been almost 9 years since Jared Malvick and his roommates discovered a stranger had been living in their basement, but the psychological effects are still lingering with him. He said, "I would never leave a door unopened now. That's for sure." He said, "Even a utility closet, I need to know what's in there." Malvick tells A&E Crime Investigation. He said, "I feel like I am less trusting of landlords. It's not made me hostile, but it's definitely made me more on edge and more cautious. The crime of individuals secretly living in someone's home is known as phrogging, reference to how frogs leap from place to place." So the phrogging can take many forms, as I was just saying, from transient intruders to more permanent ones. In occupied homes or ones where the owner is not in the residence, victims often sense something is amiss, but easily doubt themselves and hesitate to seek help, at least at first. Malvik then was a junior at the Ohio State University and lived with 9 other people on the second floor of an off-campus house. Another group of people lived on the first floor and in the basement behind a locked door that the landlord dismissed as a utility closet. Apparently lived a graduate student named Jeremy. The roommates had experienced bizarre occurrences like waking up to a slew of open cupboards in the kitchen. And today he says he's still not sure if Jeremy was doing that or if another roommate was playing pranks on him and stuff. So basically what happened was this guy went downstairs to the basement for some reason. I forget what the reason was. And one of the roommates went down there, and this guy came out of that locked room and said, "Oh, I live here. My name's Jeremy. I'm a grad student, blah, blah, blah." The landlord knew the guy was there, but nobody else knew. And this was like for months. So imagine that would freak you out a little bit. You're in this building. Of course, there's a lot of other people living there too in a college situation. But still, somebody living in a utility closet and you not knowing about it, that's a little bit kind of scary, right? So they just chalked it up to a weird encounter, but the guy said, "I just don't feel right now. I feel like somebody's always watching me or somebody's always there." That's not even the creepiest one, okay? So that's one example of the different types of frogging that can happen. But there's a couple stories where the intruder was actually underneath the bed while the couple was sleeping in their master bedroom. That gets a little bit scary, don't you think? I mean, just knowing that somebody is cohabitating that space with you, or actually not knowing, right? So that would freak you out a little bit. And I want to read something to you. It's a little bit different than that situation. So this story here says, in 1995, when I was 20, I moved to Enumclaw, a farming town in U.S. state of Washington, right? To be close to my brother and his family. I rented an apartment. My room was on the top floor, but on my first night, lying in bed, I heard footsteps above me. Over months, I started noticing things going missing. I would buy a 6-pack of soda, drink one, and come home and find only 4 left. It was the same with packets of soup and ramen noodles. I also noticed that the doors had been left open that I left closed, or vice versa. Mostly I found it amusing and assumed that my brother, who had a key to my place, was coming over and eating my food. Looking back, I should have known it wasn't him, because there would have been dirty dishes left over. She said she got a puppy, and while she was being toilet trained, she kept the puppy in the bathroom. One day, when I was out, the apartment flooded. I came home to find the puppy in the sink. She was tiny. I didn't know how she could have gotten up there in the sink unless somebody had put her there to save her. So that's kind of weird, right? She said she continued to hear footsteps, and she realized that there was a hatch. Let me see where this hatch was. There was a hatch in the attic that was open a little bit and stuff. One day she called in sick to work. She laid on the couch all day until 11 p.m., turned off the lights, lit a candle, and ran a bath. As she laid in the water, she noticed the attic hatch was open again. The attic hatch was open again. Suddenly, everything slowed way down, she said. What took about 30 seconds felt like 5 minutes. All the puzzle pieces fell into place. The footsteps, the food, the puppy, someone was in her apartment. Her first thought was if they had wanted to kill her, she'd already be dead. They had had access to her for 6 months. She assumed it must be a man or someone tall enough to get up there without a ladder. She knew she had to stay cool and not scare him in case he might hurt her. So she walked naked to the bedroom to get her robe, passing the mirrored closet, and she suspected that that person was in the closet at the time. Went down to the kitchen and collected a hammer just in case she needed to defend herself. She said she called the cops, and 3 minutes later, she was outside, and the cops searched the place and didn't find anybody but they did find a sleeping bag in the attic with some other personal items and some food and stuff like that. So somebody was definitely up there and had been up there for 3 months and gotten out before the police got there. She said the house she lives in now in Illinois doesn't have an attic, thankfully. She lives there with her husband, 2 children, and a dog and 2 birds. Sadly, her puppy was hit by a car 2 years after she moved out of that Washington apartment. She often thinks she was the only one who saw what was going on, and meaning the puppy. So that's kind of freaky, right? Because this is the same thing we hear in a lot of the stories, is that they heard footsteps and this and that. So anybody can kind of get into your home. If you have a home that has a lot of exposures, like an attic space, a basement, crawl spaces, a lot of times there are crawl spaces that we don't even know about, okay? There's a photo here of an attic right here. And as an example, for some people, they have attics like this and they just don't use them. So they don't know, or I guess they don't check it regularly, so they wouldn't know if anybody was in there. Here's a mugshot of a gentleman that was living in someone's attic. Look at that. You've got the insulation there. This particular gentleman they did catch, but he had been there for 5 months in that attic and just coming in and out when people were gone. And he had his belongings up there as well. But I mean, look at this guy. Do you want this guy living in your attic? Do you want this guy living with you at all? Yeah, it's kind of creepy. So just the fact that if you have a space like that, you might want to check it and just see, if this is something you need to lock up or whatever. There's another guy here who says, it wasn't really our house, but I used to live on a farm with my boyfriend. This is a girl. With my boyfriend, his bosses, the landowners, had a house on the other side with a sleep out for their son, and another house, a few padlocks over it with one of the bosses that the brothers lived there. I used to help my boyfriend with milking in the afternoon by getting the cows and switching fences, etc. The cows were often in the paddocks, I say padlocks, in the paddocks surrounding the brother's house. The guy freaked me out. Anyway, he had his ex-girlfriend held captive in that house for almost 2 months. All that time, I was there at their place with no idea she was in there needing help. I still feel guilty. Thankfully, she wasn't seriously harmed, but I can't imagine the mental impact it's had on her. That's not surprising. I watch a lot of the murder documentaries and missing documentaries and stuff. I think there's a ton of people being held captive. I mean, come on, with all these detention centers and things going on right now, there's lots of people that have disappeared and nobody knows where they're at and what's going on with them. So that doesn't surprise me so much, but I think it's a little scary to know that somebody might actually be in your home with you when you're not there. Another guy shares a story and says, my uncle's ex-wife lived in his crawl space. So again, the attics, utility closets, things like that, you got to want to know that those things are there. I'm going to show you a shot right here of this gentleman. So this old man was a mental patient. He'd been living in that attic for almost a year above the lady's master bedroom, and she did not know it. It took a whole year before they knew that. She did not really use that attic or go up there. But that's kind of creepy, because if you got one of these deals right here, yeah, I'd be locking that shit up all the time. This is an actual photo of where they found a Phroggers who had lived up there. It's not the one where that gentleman is that I showed you in the last picture there. So anyway, this guy's uncle's ex-wife lived in the crawl space in the roof for about 6 months. We would hear some crazy sounds, and he honestly thought raccoons had gotten up into the space again. He called the post. He called the post control to look around, or pest control to look around. He came back down with a face of true horror, confused, and told the guy, I can't get rid of what's up there, sir, but maybe the police can. Now scared, he got us out of the house, and he did call the police. Imagine the surprise of seeing 2 officers coming out of your attic with a heroin addict, his aunt, his uncle's ex. It was not the first or the last time that she had done this, and yes, my uncle had restraining orders against her as well. So she was a heroin addict, and she was living up there in that guy's space for all and stuff. And a lot of these stories that you hear about these Phroggers is typically it will involve drugs and stuff. One of the stories, if you catch the stream on the frogging, people hiding in your house on Lifetime I was telling you about, if you watch that one, there's a story there where the people kept hearing stuff down underneath their house. The crawl space was not that big down there. They called the police a couple times. And finally, the guy said, I saw a white guy go crawl through the space on the side of my house and then come out of there. So he called the police, and the police went in there, and the police actually crawled into the crawl space with their flashlight. They're in there for a little while. The guy's freaking out. He knows somebody's under there. And they bring out a black guy, a big black guy. And the guy's going, no, that's not him. That's not who was under my house. That's not who I saw come in and go out from under my house. And he said, well, this is who's down there. And he goes, no, there's another guy. And they go, no, it isn't. We searched it. There's no other guy. Well, long story short, they take the black guy into custody, right? And then a couple of days later, the white guy is seen again going into the basement. He calls the police. The police come to get him. In the end, what was happening was these tweakers were pulling their chemicals under this guy's crawl space and making meth down there. And the owner of the house had no idea any of that was going on. And that was happening for about 3 months. So I'm just saying, if you have exposures in areas that maybe should be locked up, you might want to look at your place and see where you're at with that, because that's kind of freaky. So interestingly enough, right, meth heads making meth in your crawl space in your house. So, yeah. Here's another one. This is interesting. I was very young, 2 years old. It says, we lived in a row home in South Baltimore. It says, me, my mom, and my stepdad, we had stuff that kept coming up missing. My parents worked a lot and went to a nanny during working hours. She went to a nanny, so they assumed the other person had moved it and didn't really think anything was serious and amiss. One day they came home from work and we were cleaned out. They took electronics, valuables, even my Garfield pillow for some reason, so they called the cops. 2 cops show up, did a thorough sweep of the house. Their basement had a dirt floor and only one light bulb on the right side of the stairs near the washer and dryer. The left side of the basement was super dark and only used for storing boxes. Well, someone had constructed a false brick wall on that side and was living behind it. As it turns out, it was our landlord's mentally ill nephew who had gotten the key somehow and likely never meant us any harm, but he was ill and an addict to boot. When they caught him, he was sent to a mental facility. So there's another example of a Phroggers, 5150, mental patient, and he's been living there for a couple months and they didn't know about it. It's creepy stuff, you guys. So, and there's a million stories of these. Check it out. Google it sometime and read some of these stories and it'll really freak you out. I had already heard about these. I knew that they happened. When I was wanting to get into law enforcement, I learned a little bit about this kind of stuff. But it's kind of scary, right? And they get even scarier than that. And here's a little thing that just says, beware of Phroggers, and they're showing you that someone may secretly be living with you. You see that guy in the picture, and he's looking up at a camera that someone had placed because people finally got so freaked out because different things were happening. And typically what these people are doing is going, oh, that's weird. The chair wasn't there last night we came in, or that wasn't like that, and somebody moved this, and there was nobody here to do that, so who did it? Well, they start thinking they have a spirit or a ghost. They want to sage the home. All these kind of ideas they come up with. And because they think, what other explanation could there be? Another reason why I say check your surroundings and your exposures around your house and stuff like that. We talked about some of these intruders being under the bed. There was one story where the guy was actually under the bed while the couple was sleeping, okay, and stayed there under the bed till the morning when those people left. But, when you're in your bedroom at night and you're in bed with your wife or your husband or significant other, that's your safe zone. You don't even think that. I mean, do any of us really check under the bed anymore? Maybe after a scary movie. I haven't done that, probably since, what was the Spielberg movie with the clown under the bed? Poltergeist, right? With the little kid and the clown wraps around his neck. Nobody really checks under the bed. And there's all kinds of like horror stories and old adages about people hiding under the bed and stuff like that. But in this case, it's happened several times, and they are under the bed, and you're in there and you don't even know it. So that could be a little bit freaky, I think. And it's something that you need to think about. I don't know. Is it going to make me look under the bed every night? I don't know. I don't think so. But, just be aware of your home and what's around your home and all that kind of stuff so that you know what your exposures are. We talked about the roommate, guys. That was interesting, right? Because if you're living in a place and nobody tells you somebody else is living on that dwelling with you, that could be scary too. So I want to talk about this Tina Bowen chick. She was actually, and I want to show you this first. Let me show you this. So you see this shot here. So this is a YouTube video of a Phroggers that was living in an attic space in a girl's bedroom in the apartment. So what you're seeing there is the intruder, the Phroggers, and it's really creepy, you guys, because, so she's not home, and as soon as she leaves, this lady who was living up there, there's a little a closet space up on top where you can push it open and go into like an attic space. So what we're going to show you here is how she was doing it, because this is off of some hidden cameras. So she would come out of that crawl space in the top as soon as that girl was gone, everybody was gone, and she would stand on that little table there, then get down to the floor, etc. But there she is chilling over there on the left on the little desk area and stuff. This is creepy stuff though, right? So it's her bedroom and that's an attic space. So what's interesting about this is if you watch that show I was just telling you about Phrogging, they were talking about how this couple had an apartment, and then right next to them, another guy and their family had an apartment. They were friends, been lived there for years and stuff. But there was a Phroggers living in that attic above them. Well, the attic was shared between the two apartments. The couple started to notice things missing. Again, they went through the whole thing where they thought they had a ghost or there was a spirit in the house and this and that and stuff. So they finally called the police, right? Because it got really creepy and they heard noises and this and that. So the police come over and they start searching the place, right? Well, I guess they were going to check one of those attic spaces, like that girl you just saw in the picture coming down out of that closet attic. I guess they pushed that board up to look up into there, and it was like it was being held or something, right? And like 2 minutes later, the neighbor next door comes over to his friends and says, "Hey, are you guys up in the attic? Because I just tried to open my side, and when I did, somebody pushed it back down." Right then, the cops knew somebody was up there. They pushed it. They got up there, and there was a guy who'd been living up there for like 6 months with all his shit above these people's two apartments. Creepy, freaky, right? So if you've got one of those, we used to have one of those in my master bedroom in the closet. We never opened that thing for anything. I don't, it's spiders, cobwebs, and stuff. So we didn't even go in there. But I mean, who knows? I mean, I couldn't even imagine it. Tina Bowen, let me tell you about this chick. Tina Bowen was convinced that the spirits of her deceased mother was speaking to her through the walls in her home in Massachusetts. For weeks, the teenager received, this is really weird, she received cryptic messages into the walls and then on condiments like ketchup. Items mysteriously will rearrange themselves all around the house. Full bottles of alcohol suddenly became empty. Then on December 8, 1986, Bowen and her father returned home to find a bone-chilling sight. A stranger in one of their closets with a painted face, a Native American-style jacket, a ninja mask, and a hatchet in his hand. He forced the Bowens into a bedroom before running off into another part of the home. Tina used the opportunity to escape and call the police. Authorities arrived and found that this guy's name right here, it was this guy. Daniel LaPlante. Daniel LaPlante, the Massachusetts teen who hid in his crush's walls and then went on to commit brutal murders. That's the guy that they came home to. And he was linked to the crime scene really easily. So let me tell you what else he did. This is even crazier. Isn't this one? No. Here's what I want to show you. So this is the police drawing of where they found him. Okay. So they're showing with a 4-foot space by 4 foot there. It's a little triangle area. That's the little space he'd been living in and kind of stalking the family. There was one, I will tell you on that show, when you're watching it, you'll see it. There was one where the father and his wife and the kids lived in the home. They kept hearing stuff. Well, one day the guy was there alone, and he kept hearing something low to the ground by the floor. So he goes over to the side of the floor, and he gets down on the floor, and he looks in the outlet, and there's no plug outlet in the hole where the plate is. And he goes like this and looks in it, and when he looks in it, a green eyeball is looking back at him. There was somebody living in the wall and had been there for almost a year, and they had sleeping bags and stuff. There was a space in there that nobody knew about. It became creepy. So Daniel LaPlante, here he is with the Bowen family. Here's his little space he hid in, and you can see it says concrete foundation, inner wall, open space at ground level, LaPlante's secret hiding place. And then there's a wall there, there's a toilet, and it just shows you basically where they found him. That's his little hiding place. So that's kind of creepy if you ask me, right? LaPlante later said that he had considered jumping out the window and escaping, but instead he opted to confront Priscilla, aiming a gun at her and leading her and her 5-year-old son William to the bedroom. There he forced William into a closet, tied Priscilla to the bed, gagging her with a sock. He raped Priscilla, then shot her twice in the head. Afterward, he took William into the bedroom and drowned him. And when the 7-year-old Abigail returned home, just as LaPlante was leaving, he led the young girl to another bathroom and drowned her too. This guy, LaPlante was easily linked to the crime scene, like I said, and subsequently arrested. Just 2 days later, during his trial in October of 1988, the jury found him guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to 3 life sentences. So this flogging thing can be crazy, right? And there's other stories and situations where it was also stories where it was like an ex-girlfriend or an ex-husband, and they'd been living in a secret space in the ex's house with the new wife or the new girlfriend or whatever for like a long period of time, which is kind of freaky as well. So you just got to ask yourself, wow. But this particular guy, Daniel LaPlante, that's one of the most famous flogging stories right there. I remember there being another documentary on that, and that's kind of scary, right? And then just the fact, when he come home and he comes out of the closet with his face painted and he's got a hatchet and everything. So he did a couple things, and I should look him up because I'll bet there's other cases on him. But just an example. You want to check your place out. And again, I encourage everyone to watch the documentary Phrogging, Someone Hiding in Your Home, special on Life. I think it's Lifetime. If you look on your streaming apps, you'll find it there. Again, produced in 2021. So many stories of people hiding and living between the walls and crawl spaces of homes and stuff. The last one I'm going to share with you is kind of the creepiest one to me. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this real quick. So there's a couple, right? There's a couple that I forgot where they live, but they were having the same kind of thing happen as all these other people were saying. Living in their house, hearing noises upstairs, investigating, never finding anything. This is a pretty nice apartment, as you'll see from the video clips. And these are stills from the video clip. What happened was they started having things, moved around, things missing, hearing strange noises, but it's one guy and one girl living in this apartment, and they had all this shit going on, and they were kind of getting freaked out, and they were doing the same thing everybody else was going, maybe it's a ghost, maybe we have a spirit in here, maybe there's something going on. It turned out to be a Phroggers. So they hooked up a bunch of cameras just to satisfy themselves and their curiosity, because they didn't know what the hell was going on. They never thought anyone was in their home. But they put in these cameras, and when they were gone a couple times, they would record and whatnot. But on this particular night, when they reviewed this footage, they were actually home, okay? And this guy had been under their bed at another point in their story with this guy. But like the photo I just showed you, this is the first thing they catch on video. Now, he's upstairs where the bedrooms are, and you can see he's got a hoodie on. And the guy has put down a little description here on his video. And what we see is a very menacing figure. It's obviously a person in a hoodie at the top of the stairs that leads up to the bedrooms. The rest of the apartment is located downstairs. Here we see him again on another shot of the film. And a resident, it says the resident posted a video from inside their home. So guys, they did not even know this guy was there until they put these cameras in and then were reviewing video and watching it back. What freaked them out about this was while they're watching it, they're realizing we are home. We are literally asleep on the couch with the TV on right below him. So you can kind of see the couch there in the kitchen area and stuff, and look at him at the top of the stairs, looking down at he and his girlfriend sleeping on the couch. So it's bad enough to think somebody might be in your house when you don't even know it and everything, right? But look, there it is on the film. So imagine that you're the one with your wife. You both passed out on the couch, fell asleep to a movie or whatever, and here's this guy lurking at the top of the stairs looking down at you. Creepy, creepy, creepy. And I forget how he got into their place, but I'll have to look back and see what that was. So he's being very careful not to disturb anyone, wake them up. But as you can see, he creeps a little closer to the stairwell here, and he's looking down, and he's probably seeing that they're actually asleep right there. Super, super creepy. These people freaked out like you wouldn't believe when they watched this video back and realized, oh my God, we were literally asleep on the couch, and this guy is looking down at us from the stairway. And the funny thing was, I think it was the girlfriend that said she used to go to bed first all the time. So she'd go upstairs and go to bed all the time before he did. And I think that's where the story connected to him being under the bed at some point too. But that's just got to be a creepy thing. And look, he says, and the amount of time that he's there is frightening. Well, of course it is. Somebody's in your house, but then when you look at a video and you realize how long he was in there and you were in there with him, yeah, that's a little bit freaky. So the term is frogging, and it's creepy and it's scary. So if you've got a big home, if you've got exposures, I would really check out your exposures on your home and inside your house. I used to be the kind of person who wouldn't lock my door at night and all that stuff, like you hear everybody else say, because we always lived in very friendly communities and stuff like that. You just can't do that anymore. So I always make sure my doors are locked and bolted, and I don't have any places or hidden areas where people can be, because that's just too freaky. So here's the explanation of the whole deal right here. Frogging, it's a modern slang term that gained traction around 2014 after a short film used it, describing intruders secretly living in homes, inspired by frogs leaping from one place to another, and fueled by a 2019 movie. And then, of course, the documentary I was telling you about in 2022, a Lifetime series. So I was right, it's Lifetime. You can find it on Frogging, Hider in My House. The concept, the act of secretly living in someone else's home, attics, crawl spaces, closets, without their knowledge. The name frogging, of course, talking about frogs hopping, leaping from place to place. So that's where the term comes from. That's what it is, and that's kind of creepy, right? So I thought I'd share that subject tonight because I got very involved in that documentary. I encourage you to watch it. I encourage you to check your home and check your spaces. I have a little closet over here next to me right now. I don't know. Somebody might be living in there. I don't know. Freaky though, right? And that videotape with the guy watching them while they're sleeping, people under the bed, in the little closet. Nobody wants a part of that. So if you're interested, check it out. If those kind of things scare you, maybe you shouldn't watch it, but you should definitely be aware of it. And that's why I had to do a special edition. Before we leave tonight, I want to talk about some pop news that happened this week. Two quick things. The first one is going to be our friend Andy Dick, and I'm sure most of you may have seen this or not seen it on entertainment news or the news. But Andy Dick overdosed, almost killed himself. And you can see he says here on TMZ's Insta site, Andy Dick on overdose. I don't mind doing a little crack now and then. Okay, so here's what I tell you about Andy Dick. I've been around Andy Dick a million times when I was a bodyguard in Hollywood. When I worked for Jimmy Kimmel Live, Andy Dick was a regular guest on our show because he was unpredictable, off the wall, and it was good for the show and good for the ratings most of the time. There were a few times we had to remove him on commercial break and get him out of there. One in particular was when I think it was Ivana Trump was a guest on the show, and he kept touching her leg and he wouldn't stop, and Jimmy kept telling him to stop, and eventually we had to take him out of there, throw in his limo and get him out. I was pretty friendly with his publicist at the time, and I used to ask her, how do you deal with him? Because Andy liked to do drugs. Everyone knew that. He would go to his dressing room with a bunch of weird people that were strange and probably on a lot of different drugs, and close the door, and he was just very nonchalant about his fame, coming out to do the interview and all that stuff. He was always hard to deal with. And she told me, I always tell him if he has an appearance, I tell him it's at this time, which is usually an hour earlier or whatever, because he won't be ready. So she dealt with him. She knew how to deal with him and stuff. But yeah, he's a crazy one. And I don't know if you saw the footage. He was out there on Sunset or something, somewhere in WeHo or something, West Hollywood, and he was ODing and just couldn't stand up, and people were trying to help him, and they're like, hey, this is Andy Dick. You got to get him help and stuff. And as soon as I saw it, I kind of chuckled because Andy's been going through this for years and stuff. I read as most recently as yesterday, I think, that he has put himself into a drug rehab. Well, Andy's been in and out of a million rehabs, and I guarantee you his publicist or his agent or whoever just released that statement because that's what you're supposed to release after you've been caught on tape, screwed up out of your mind. The last thing on pop news, saddest, craziest thing, the world has been crazy, right, for a while. Lots of bad stuff happening, a lot of hate, a lot of horrible, horrible things, but this one was pretty damn horrible. Mr. Rob Reiner, as you all know, the Hollywood Reporter, reported Rob Reiner, who directed such beloved Hollywood classics as This Is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, When Harry Met Sally, and after starring in the trailblazing sitcom All in the Family, which was an icon of a show, of course, that addressed racism way before its time, died on Sunday along with his wife, Michelle, in their Brentwood home. Rob Reiner had a son, I guess, allegedly. He's been arrested. He had a son, and his son had been dealing with a drug addict thing, or he was addicted to drugs, and I think some pretty heavy shit, a lot of stuff, for years. And ironically, the story is that he was actually at a Christmas party at Conan O'Brien's house the night before this happened, or the night it happened, and him and his son got into a really loud argument that the whole party saw and knew about and were worried about. And Rob and Michelle had a lot of problems with this kid. And he's a big kid, too. But what I heard and what I saw, and there's probably more to be told through the investigation, was that when they got home, that escalated, and that son of his slit their throats and killed both of them in that home. And unfortunately, his daughter, who he had with Penny Marshall, who of course we all know from Laverne and Shirley, who became a great director herself, her daughter is the one who went to the house and found her dad and her stepmom there and stuff. So that was really, really sad. And I love Rob Reiner. He wasn't just a great director, he was a great actor. Again, here's some of his movies. You all know him. Princess Bride, right? When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, The American President, Misery, Stand By Me, Spinal Tap. I mean, just a great guy. And I loved when he played a part in a movie because he was very humorous like his father. Carl Reiner is comedic, royalty. He's an icon. And I'm glad that Carl's not here to see what happened to Rob and Michelle, but definitely very, very sad. I want to say rest in peace to our friend Rob Reiner, and thank you for all the great movies and for all your funny roles you played. Rob Reiner, 1947, 2025. This has been episode 51 of We Need to Talk About This. Check your homes. Make sure they're safe. Stay safe. The world's crazy. This has been a special edition. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I'm Chuck Oliveris. We'll see you then.